Hey, I'm Amy with Creative Catapult Coaching,
And I'm Megan with Focus Like a Mother and Change HP.
and this is the Control Alt Think podcast, Conversations with Neurodivergent Minds. After Megan and I have already run out of our first round of everything in our brains today.
Yes. Yes. I guess some people would call it oversharing, but the excitement of whatever we're working on currently or whatever is just nagging at us the most.
Yes, and so while somebody might find it interesting, at least on some level, we get our first level of bleh out before we
Yes.
jump on. That's going to be a beautiful recording, I'm sure. But
Yes.
in that vein, I'm going to let Megan kind of take the direction we're going here. But last week she offhandedly mentioned something about brain blenders, which I was like, I've been intrigued all week. And so after our initial clarification, I'm going to let her introduce the topic.
All right. So it took me, it's like brain blenders. I thought you meant blunders with a U. You meant blenders, like the thing you make a smoothie in. Um, so I had to think about it for a second. But when I use the word brain and blender in the same sentence, I am most likely talking about my own personal experience with the phenomenon called mom brain. Um, Mommy brain, baby brain, pregnancy brain, general parent brain fog, um, the feeling of your brain going to mush. Or as I really thought the first time I was pregnant and constantly took like fish oil and made sure I was eating lots of uh, omega
Uh-huh.
fatty acids and stuff, I thought that the baby was sucking all of the nutrients from my brain and I was just losing it and I was just going to have a really smart kid, which I mean, I'm biased, but my kids are really smart, but it is not because they sucked the brain cells out of my head while they were in utero. Um, so it's kind of the whole journey of creating my business, but yeah,
So
so
just
I
for
was
those
probably
that
talking,
haven't been pregnant, like in my case, basically going through pregnancy, not just because your body's under a lot of stress and wear and tear, but basically you've told me, and this totally makes sense, that the brain undergoes a whole massive restructuring basically during pregnancy and parenthood.
yes. So the scientific term is called matrescence, and it is a biological, neurological changes, a series of changes that rivals what happens to you, to your brain and your body in adolescence. So everybody can remember being a teenager and like stuff is changing and you're like, what the heck is going on with my body? Well, the whole process of bringing a life into this world um, does things to your brain and your body that are on the same level, if not even more changes than happen to your brain during adolescence. And the other thing research has proven is and shown is that even non-birthing parents um, and other primary caregivers also experience some of these changes. So it's not just, it is driven by hormones and some of the physiological changes in some respects, but it's also driven by all of the demands and the stresses and the rapid learning that your brain has to go through. Because as I was just working on writing, I do not have where this quote comes from, but parents are made, they're not born. So I need to look up where the quote came from. Um, but for me, babies don't come out with an instruction manual, and you
And
don't
I think
become a
we've
parent.
all heard that before.
Yeah, babies don't come with instruction manuals. I have two, and they're totally different. So they're just different models. But they just don't. And a lot of parents feel like there's some innate quality that we have as humans that means we should just naturally know how to do all of these things as caregivers. The fact of science is that that's not how it works, that your brain actually has to change and adapt to be able to do all of those things. But it
And
happens
so
really
can I,
fast.
I jump in with and so as a lot of neurodivergent folks, no, and I'm just adding a little bit of context is this is where a lot of our overlap comes in is that, part of that brain change ends up with a lot of executive dysfunction. ADHD, and a lot of us don't already feel like there's an operating manual for our brains. Um, I guess I've had the advantage of my whole life having time to theoretically adapt to this, whereas somebody becoming a parent gets these changes kind of thrown on them suddenly, and it's more complicated than that as well because there's other people involved.
Yeah, that's what we were kind of back and forth with a little bit before we started, was that it's a sudden change. And so it's a little bit different. But even parents with ADHD and any neurodivergent person, as you go into adulthood, like I spent my entire adult life figuring out strategies to organize my thoughts and get stuff done and set reminders and basically manage my executive function. Um, and I felt like I remember telling um, an older female friend who is also a mom who had similar work functions to me, did like project management. I was like, I feel like my brain went through a blender and everything I did before, you might as well throw it out the window because now I can't even think straight. And she was like, oh, yeah, that's normal. Um, so that's kind of the brain through the blender piece that,
Yeah. Well, and I love that you've got this focus for your coaching business specifically on helping parents understand and navigate that because, yeah, there's a lot of stereotypes about, parents and the lack of sleep. But then to actually sit down and focus and be able to help people navigate that, I think is really cool because, yeah, brains in a blender. I think that's gonna just be my new favorite word for a while. Is that there's some days with brain fog and overwhelm that my brain just feels completely discombobulating. And I think we all need more support when we hit those spaces than we realize. A lot of us do it alone or try to do it alone, and it's easier, at least if we're part of a community or feel supported.
yeah. And there was a piece, there goes my brain, but there was a piece that you mentioned about executive dysfunction in there. Um, since I'm being all nerdy, research has proven that having a child actually improves, being a parent actually improves your executive function in the longer term, but it causes some, minor glitches for the first couple of years. So, and there are lots and different reasons for it. One of mine is constant interruptions. Like I'll be halfway through something and it's like, oh, I have to put that down to go do whatever. I've seen so many reels of moms, there's supposed to be ADHD reels, but it's like, oh, I'm gonna take out the trash, and I scoop it up and walk to the garage, and oh wait, can't get it all the way outside because look, there's something else that needs to get put away, or walk past something, and then you get back to the beginning of the circle, and it's like, wait, what was I doing again? So that's just common in a few different circles.
Yeah, I've also heard about ADHD cleaning kind of like a Roomba. You just kind of pick up and start going, and wherever you do, it's probably better, but it's not clean. It just kind of you bump off of something and go the other direction. But I think it's kind of an interesting phenomena that different stages definitely elicit different brain functional
Hmm.
abilities or challenges, as the case may be.
Yeah, it's interesting. It changes sensory processing, emotional processing, the social responses, so picking up on social cues, all different things. One of the big ones for me is the sensory stuff, that it's just like, oh, now I'm definitely aware that you and I have talked about like my loop earplugs and your flare audio. Um, Now I can't remember what they're called, but
Audio, yes, sleeves. I don't know what
yeah,
else to call them. They're little tubes that help with sound distortion.
yeah.
Um,
But it's been, I mean, this is kind of what you and I talk about a lot, is different things in the overlap, because a lot of the coping strategies and scaffolds and um, adaptations and accommodations that you help people figure out what works for them on the ADHD side is very similar to what I'm doing on the um,
the parents,
matrescence or parenthood side. Yeah.
yeah. And because we both experience a lot of this as coaches and human beings ourselves, we can talk about it from different perspectives and compare where it's similar and where it's different. And
Hmm.
I think part of the reason we even decided to record these, other than me saying, oh, that's interesting, we should. Um, but again, if people find our discussions and community interesting, that's kind of cool. And I know that these discussions are probably not things that everyone is going to have a deep interest in, and that's fine.
Not everybody wants to spend their afternoon hearing about the amygdala, Amy.
But why not? An amygdala and your limbic system and the sensory processing stuff, obviously are areas that I find quite fascinating, and forget that not everybody cares about that in the same way that I do, but things that they may find more important or relevant are often things I don't care much about, whether that's normal social stuff. We'll just say normal social stuff. And that's fine, because I know I'm not the only one who also finds some of that stuff less relevant to my life. But it's still important to find that community and find that place where we are supported, whether it's sound sensitivities or becoming a new parent, or not feeling isolated is, I think, such a huge thing. And just having a conversation about this kind of stuff hopefully helps normalize it for people to go, you know what? I experienced that too. And there are others, and it's hard, and maybe I should ask for help, or maybe I can just talk with somebody else about it and they'll go, oh yeah, me too.
Hmm.
Because being a parent is something that a lot of people have done, but
Hmm.
I'm not sure a lot of people always, other than moms talking to other moms, stereotypically complain about how hard it is.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's cool that you as a non-parent are interested in and excited about learning about the changes and how the overlap with the concepts that you already know about, because you mentioned before this stereotype, like there's a very harmful stereotype out there, and we often dismiss it, we being moms. Oh, it's just somebody just said it to me by Friday, because everybody knows me as the mom brain person in my networking circles. um I don't have to tell them my name. I just have to say I'm the focus like a mother lady, and they're like, "Oh yeah." Somebody said, "Oh, mom brain moment, I forgot to announce whatever it was at our networking meeting." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not a reframing it as it's not a bad thing." So trying to reframe the stereotype, um, because the long-term changes go beyond just improving executive function and being able to manage all those different things, so many different things in the long term, but a lot of those changes, like sensory and social, emotional, and other things, stay stay with you long term, and they have benefits once you figure out how to adapt to the brain's new operating system,
New
per se.
configuration.
Yeah, but it's just that transition period gets such a bad rap that then, like in the workplace, especially in the corporate world, it's like, oh, she's going to come back to work from maternity leave and she won't be able to get as much work done, or she's not going to be able to, she's going to forget everything all the time, or, she's going to have mom brain. And it's like, it's, it's not a bad thing. And it's also, it's not a joke. It's something that happens to every single one of us. And it happens to dads and adoptive parents and, non-birthing mothers and everybody that's trying to juggle small people, tiny tyrants, and all their demands.
Yeah, when I wonder then, by default, how much that extends to any major life change, that our brains go through a disorganization and rewiring phase, that would share similarities and differences, perhaps, but
The other one that came to mind was illnesses and injuries.
yeah, and that's where, as I've dealt with a lot of chronic health stuff, wondering how often my brain is dealing with that, or, even job loss and, anything that's self-concept related could be an
Trauma.
interesting overlap, trauma.
There is actually a phrase called trauma brain, that I have not dug as much into. But yeah, any any of those major things that have impact and are very stress related, because some of the hormones are not birth related. So stress
Yeah,
is not a birth related hormone. So
well, it's not exclusive to birth.
not exclusively. No. So, well, we are just about at the end of our time. Any other questions for me about my brain going through a blender, Amy?
How are you feeling now? I know that your youngest is a little over two, a little under
She's
two.
just under. She'll be 2 here in a couple months. So I had the thought earlier today when I almost put the fork from lunch in the trash can instead of the soup container. Um,
So not through it all yet.
Not through it all yet. But I notice moments like that more when I'm not taking the best care of myself and not managing my own nutrition, sleep, exercise, hydration, um, moments to myself, rest, as we've talked about in our other episodes. So yeah, it's a lot better now. I mean, 2 years ago when you and I first started working together and I was in my third trimester with my daughter, um, I had trouble sitting down at my desk and figuring out what I sat down to work on and which thing I needed to get done. And I used to keep tons of lists and could use planners and stuff, and none of the things that I did before worked for me anymore. So now I've found new tools. Um, and so now I've gotten a lot better.
And still work in progress, and now you're doing a podcast.
Yes. So with that, I will wrap us up on our topic of brains in a blender. I am Megan with Focus Like a Mother and Change HP.
And I'm Amy with Creative Catapult Coaching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.